Bloodsingers, Blood Series, Book 1, narrated by New York Times bestseller Tamara Rose Blodgett. Copyright 2007 through 2012. Prologue. Julia pressed her nose to the glass, the trees a sea of green, as they rushed outside her window, her mama and daddy's voices a low and pleasant drone from the front seat. She hated the belt. It pressed across her neck in an uncomfortable place, itchy and suffocating. "Mama," Julia whined plaintively. Her mother's chocolate eyes appeared over the front seat, such a contrast to the auburn hair held in her customary ponytail. "What is it?" Julia worked her small finger under the belt and said, "I hate the stupid strap. I want to take it off." Julia crossed her arms, huffing. Mama sighed, unlatching her belt as she turned in the front seat to adjust the neck restraint portion of Julia's seatbelt. As Mama got nearer, Julia smelled the special perfume that she wore. At once, Mama's scent assaulted her, where it intimately combined with the perfume she always wore. Daddy said from the front, "Amber, sit back down. The belt's latched. She's just going to have to deal with it for another 10 minutes. Julia's eyes narrowed to slits. Daddy was so stubborn. His belt didn't bite his neck, 'cause he was a big man. Ugh, Julia fumed. Mama smiled and began to turn, and Julia saw Daddy's face and profile, watching to make sure she seated herself safely. He only took his eyes off the road for a moment. It was enough. Julia saw twin beads of light bear down on their car as an impossibly large grill came to eat them, the chrome winking in the late afternoon light. Daddy made a correction to the right, but that threw Mama on top of him, imprisoning their bodies in a macabre dance, the steering wheel sandwiching them together. As if in slow motion, Julia saw her mother's face as Amber looked at her father. The knowledge of their impending death appeared on their faces like an unspoken promise. Julia screamed as the truck slammed into the car, and the belt that she hated so much whipped against her neck, slamming Julia against the back seat with such force that the breath left her small body. Julia watched her parents crush together in a final embrace. The metal colliding was an earthquake in her ears, and something wet and warm hit her face. Julia opened her eyes, and her parents were everywhere, their blood like a blanket that coated Julia's face and hair. Her brain howled, refusing to accept what was happening. Her vision clouded, her neck and head throbbed, and Julia's lungs were a burning inferno with the need to scream. The last thing she remembered was her mother's hair, entwined in the steering wheel like so much spun copper. Later, Julia stuffed her wool cap down more firmly on her head and waded through the icy puddles on the way to her 1977 Chevy Blazer. Fall had edged into early winter, and the dampness of the rain had solidified into a dangerous sheet of ice. Julia had known better, and instead of wearing the latest UGG fashion boots, she'd slogged on her extra toughs. They had an unparalleled ugliness, but did the job. She might keep her ass in the air instead of pegged on an ice puddle by wearing her trusty boots. She threw her backpack over one shoulder and balanced a steaming cup of coffee in the other hand. She'd lied through her teeth about the contents to Aunt Lily, who seemed to think caffeine was the devil's drink. Julia smiled at that. She believed she was done growing, and besides, coffee was a mainstay of Alaska existence. She shuffled to the driver's side and gripped the handle. Then her feet lost some of their purchase, and she slid to the right, her coffee sloshing out of the slit on the travel mug. "Shit," Julia said as a couple of hot drops landed on her wrist, scalding her. Grappling with the handle, she jerked the door open and threw her palm on the driver's her seat, steadying herself until Julia could heave her backpack inside. But her breath stilled in her lungs when Julia saw what waited for her. A single rose, its tremulous form in a beautiful ethereal tangerine color lay inches from where her reddened and chapped hand had slapped down. She'd almost destroyed it while saving her sliding butt from falling. A smile stole over her face, and Julia carefully put her travel mug in the cup holder between the seats and picked up the flower. No note, no thorns, but Julia knew who had laid it there. Her fiancé, Jason. Actually, that part was a secret. Lily would have 10 different kinds of cows if she knew how serious they really were. Julia looked around, her breath coming in white puffs in the crisp air, the snow having not committed itself to falling yet. The promise still hung in the air. It would be like him, Julia thought, to pop up and grab her from behind, twirling her around just as Julia discovered his present. But he wasn't there. She turned the keys and jacked up the heat all the way. 5 minutes, and she'd hit the road, head to Homer High. She was spoiled. Usually Jason picked her up, but today she had to head over to the DMV and get a stupid emissions test. It was amazing they even allowed her to drive her gas-guzzling truck. Julia sighed. Soon she'd be with Jason. School. Julia tore off her multicolored, itchy hat as she waltzed into the school, the familiar smell of kids, books, lunch, and all other school fragrances wafting across the air. The chill of late autumn left outside the doors. She fluffed her champagne-colored hair, hoping to eradicate the hat head Julia had tagged herself with on the way over. "Hey, bestie," Cynthia cried. Julia laughed. Like she hadn't just spent all day and a night last weekend with Sin. She acted like they'd been separated for months. "Hey, Sin," Julia said, slowing, letting her catch up. As usual, Sin was dressed to the nines. High heels, ridiculously tight-ass pants, and the latest cold-shouldered top with a crazy zebra pattern. It made Julia dizzy just looking at it. "What?" Cynthia looked at Julia's face. "Your top, it's like some kind of optical illusion or something." "I know, right? It's hot, hot, hot." She snapped her fingers after each word for emphasis. Julia rolled her eyes. There was no cure for Sin's fashion awareness. Julia considered herself fashion challenged. Yes, sirree, irrefutably. Getting everything to match and be comfortable was of utmost importance. Of course, once Julia mentioned Sin's shirt, then she was honor-bound to give Julia the once-over. Scanned from the top of her head, she'd almost escaped the wrath when Cynthia's gaze landed like a lead weight on her boots. Ugh! She shrieked in horror. "You wore your tufts to school again. And don't give me any of that horse shit about how we're seniors and absolved of everything." Sin rolled her eyes dramatically. "Fashion is the exception, and those," she waggled her fingers at Julia's offending footwear, "are for gardening only," Jason interjected smoothly, his arm sliding around Julia's waist. He'd heard the extra tough's speech before. "Don't you defend her either," Cynthia lambasted him, and Jason, all mock innocent, said, "Who, me?" Hand to chest. Cynthia's eyes narrowed to slits. "You're no help, Jason Caldwell." She could wear a shapeless sack over her body, and you'd still think she was gorgeous. "Guilty," he said, his forehead dipping to peck Julia's head, still fuzzy from the hat. Julia leaned back against Jason's chest, her head tucking comfortably underneath his chin, and sighed. This is where she'd wanted to be from the moment she opened her eyes, against him, soaking up his warmth, letting it seep into her bones and chase the coldness of the morning away. Sin snapped her fingers in front of Julia's face. "Snap out of it, Jules." Jason laughed. Julia was known to mentally wander. was becoming an annoying theme lately. What, cranky witch? Julia teased, taking a swipe at Sim with her woolen hat. Sim ducked smoothly, accustomed to Julia's abuse. Okay, so did you get that English paper done we started on Friday? Julia dug around in her backpack until she found a crumpled piece of paper at the very bottom, and turning, she slapped it against her locker, smoothing it with her other hand. Jason's big hand was a warm presence on her shoulder, kneading it softly. Are you kidding? Terrell will never accept that mess, Cynthia said, throwing out one hip and putting a hand on the jutting point. Julia shrugged a shoulder. It's a rough draft. Besides, keeping the standard low, like I do, assures me gravy when I turn something in. Julia smiled at her awesome logic. School just didn't appeal. It was something that she survived until she could graduate. It was Jason that was going to the University of Alaska, Anchorage. He was set with a full ride. Mr. Basketball. Julia turned to look at him and wondered for the millionth time why he'd want her. He was so gorgeous and she was so her. It didn't matter that Sim thought Julia was pretty. Whatever. Sim was her BFF, and that's what they do. Cheerlead each other. Julia didn't have a plan. She knew she couldn't wait to get out of Aunt Lily's place and begin a life with Jason. Cynthia gave an elaborate roll of her eyes and caved, saying, You can try all your down-home weasel-like charm on Terrell, while Jason and I turn in real papers. Unwrinkled papers. She cocked her brows up to her hairline, and looping her arm through Julia's, she dragged her to block one. The dreaded language arts. Everyone knew there was nothing artful about it. Jason laughed as they trudged to class, Julia's arms linked with theirs. Chapter 2. After Jason. Julia's chin touched her chest, lake strands of hair swirling around, her arms jerked up and chained above her head. Her hands had lost feeling hours ago. A cloak of numbness stole over her body, and Julia's mind screamed, her body aching for food. But she'd be damned if she'd ask for it or take anything from her captors, the murderers. The creature came to her, his teeth gleaming in the low light of where they kept her. Julia looked at him, her eyelids at half-mast. His piercing, silvery irises bored into her gaze. Julia felt the weight of their desire fill her mind, pressing without mercy against the fragility that was there, forcing his will. You must eat, Julia. You will eat, he said in a fierce whisper. Why don't you go to hell? Julia rasped as loud as she could. Weakened by lack of food, her voice held all the emotion that she couldn't scream. Buried in the air, grown pregnant with contained frustration and violence. Violence against her. Let me convince her, the one named Pierce said, his stare covering her body like decaying liquid. The leader, William, turned and stood in one fluid movement. I have seen your methods with the other blood singers. You will not use that here with this one. Pierce smirked, Hugo attached. She is a vehicle for our needs, nothing more. She is human. William took Pierce by the collar of the shirt he wore and dragged their faces together until they nearly met. She is much more than that. What if she is the one? Look at the sign upon her head. He shook Pierce in disgust and pushed him away. Pierce reared back and opened his mouth, and something burst from the flesh as he hissed his displeasure. Fangs. Julia swallowed. She felt like she was in a nightmare she couldn't escape from. Julia protected herself by dwelling in her memory bank. It was full. There, Julia felt rich. It was there that this new reality couldn't impede. William and Pierce looked at her quickly. She pulls away inside herself again. Fool. I almost had her. It was as if Julia could see through a glass, though darkly. Black water covered her vision and the horrible creatures that had torn her away from a future of love and contentment to a new one of terror and uncertainty, rushed toward her, and she let the water cover her consciousness. They were as dim orbs of pale flesh as they sprinted to her side. Julia felt back in the well of her mind, the liquid forming a barrier between them and her memories. For now, the memories won. Senior year, springtime. Sin bent her head over the textbook and then, looking up, scowled at Julia. This is simple. You're overthinking this stuff. Julia was beyond frustrated. She'd flunked lame-ass Algebra 2 when she was a junior and was on the eve of graduation, still struggling through the concepts. Sin at her elbow, ramrodding it down her throat, wasn't helping the learning curve. Julia's brows jacked down over her whiskey-colored eyes. I don't get it. They put the alphabet in math, and now it's a big jumble of nothing, she wailed. How in the righteous world did you pass one? Julia gave her a sheepish look. You're kidding me, right? You cribbed it off of Jason? Like, when am I going to use this worthless crap, Julia said, throwing her pencil down. You're not. That's not the point, Jules. The point is getting the grade. We're American. We're not supposed to be the intellectual global force. We just get the degree, then go on to college and get that degree. She shrugged her shoulders like, simple, right? Julia crossed her arms underneath her boobs. You don't see what's wrong with that picture? Doesn't matter what I think. I just work the system. We're not but a bunch of sheep manipulating a broken system. Speaking of manipulating, Sin said, a contemplative expression crowding her features. No, I'm not going to dress up, Julia said. Listen, we're almost done with this math cram. It's a cram, all right, Julia said. Anyways, Sin said, drawing the word out dramatically. This is your last final before graduation. Prom is coming. Let's get you hot and sexy for your man toy. Maybe Julia shouldn't have told Sin about the secret engagement, but she told Jason if she didn't tell somebody, she'd burst. Now was the endless barrage of teasing. Jason's not a toy, Sin. She scrunched her face. Okay. Ooh, touchy. Calm yourself. Julia blew a stray hair away from her forehead. She had to give in to Sin or she'd be after her ass until Julia chose a dress. Okay, Julie threw up her hands. I'll go. That's not good enough. Tell me what I need to hear. You could go and watch me pick out a dress and worm out of everything. She gave Julie steady green eyes. Damn. Sin had her there. Okay, I'll try something on and choose a dress for prom. Happy? Repeat after me. It will not be a sack, Sin said in her droll way. Julia fumed. Did Sin really think she'd pick out some shapeless sheath? I do, she said. Hey, I didn't say anything. Sin made a circling motion with her index finger alongside her head. Saw your wheels turning. She repeated the sack thing, and Cynthia smiled. Onward and upward. Jason poked the stick into the fire, mercilessly stabbing the coals, trying to decide if he should put another piece of driftwood on or not. He looked at Jules, talking animatedly with Sin, and Cabin smiled. Hell with it. He'd put on another chunk. She'd wander over here eventually and be colder than a brick of ice. Couldn't have his girl cold. That was against guy code. Keep your chick warm, fed, and most of all, protected. Jason let his gaze linger on her. He couldn't believe she'd be his soon. They'd graduate, then get married. His parents would be steaming pissed, but they'd get over it. It was always what they wanted anyway. He'd been the good boy. He'd done basketball until his body felt like it was on the court. When he laid down in his bed each night, Jason had sucked up the grades, played his ass off, and helped his girl limp through math and science. He smiled, thinking of how much Jules hated the math-science grind. Jason took her profile in, blonde hair that wanted to be red, that damn wool cap covering some of it, her legs encased in jeans that dragged along the sand, and her bright red puffy. It was her face above the collar of the jacket that Jason's eyes stroked with love. Her face. He knew Julia was the one the moment she moved to Homer when she was almost 9. Sullen and alone, living with her aunt. She'd been new with no friends. He'd been gangly and awkward 9. He'd started as her champion then and never looked back. Now and forever. As if sensing his thoughts, Julia turned to look straight at Jason, and a smile broke, her amber eyes like glittering jewels in a face caressed by firelight. Her face asked a question, and he gave a slight shake of his head. "It's nothing," his look said. Julia turned away, the ghost of a smile still playing on her lips, and she burst into laughter at some dumb thing Kevin said. Jason looked away from her and added 2 more chunks to the fire. It burned brightly and became hot. Sin. Cynthia watched the 2 of them jam together like sardines and smiled. She was happy for Julia and Jason. They'd been 2 peas in a pod since 4th grade, and Julia had it rough. She deserved the happiness. They made a cool couple. Jason was 6'2" and towered over Jules at only 5'4", but she never seemed short. Cynthia had never met anyone more alive, more independent. It was amazing her Aunt Lily had picked up the torch after Jules' parents passed. Cynthia had to admit that Lily wrangled her ass sometimes too. She was so strict on Jules, like she'd never even do anything. Hell, she was a secret prude. She hadn't even done the deed with Jason. Dating 3 years and nada. That's willpower for you. Sin looked up through her mascaraed eyelashes at Kevin, her steady and at-hand date for prom, and sighed. He was absolutely hot. She wasn't letting him get away. Cynthia had all the titillating details for Jules later. She'd acted bored and had listened raptly while she dished on her love life. A slight frown bunched her eyebrows together. She'd have to ride Jules' ass about going to Soldotna and picking out a prom dress. She was insisting on Vegas for the wedding. She was sure to get out of getting a dress. Cynthia did a mental eye roll, but Jules wasn't getting out of prom. Cynthia had tried to talk Jules out of a marriage for shit's sake. I mean, what? She'd been 18 for 6 months. What's the rush? Cynthia thought it had something to do with both her parents being killed when she was young. It had really scarred her. Julia clearly wanted something to hang on to, something tangible, something real. Cynthia wasn't sure getting married at 18 was the answer. But even she had to admit she couldn't do wrong with Jason. He worshipped Julia. She looked at the 2 of them together as she snuggled next to Kevin and watched Jason touch Jules, cupping her face like a fragile egg as they began to kiss. "Looks they got the right idea, Sin," Kevin said, waggling his eyebrows. Cynthia gave him a mock punch. "You just want to get lucky." "There is that," Kevin replied, only half joking. That's what I was talking about." Kevin dipped his head and gave Sin a peck on the lips, and she turned on the rough driftwood rock where they were perched, the warmth of the fire beating against her back, and drew him against her. His mouth found hers, and they twined themselves against each other. The sky lingered above them as a black velvet with stars sprinkled about. "Dress up." Julia thought she'd slit her wrists if she had to try on one more dress. She paced the room in a huff. She should have never said yes. Sin had her dress napped the instant they came into the boutique. Remember, fashion aware. Of course, everything looked good on Sin. With her tall, lanky frame, she could get away with anything. She chose a shell pink, full-length, gauzy thing that made her look like a princess, or a queen, judging by the way she was beating the hell out of Julia with her scepter. "Come on, Jules. I'm thinking one more." "No, I promised I'd try on dresses for you. Now look, what is this, number 15? Sin had the grace to look ashamed, flashing both hands twice. 20? Julia all but shrieked. "Right? Well, you're totally hard to find something for. I mean, who has your coloring anyway?" Julia huffed, her eyes taking in the pile of gowns growing in the corners like obscene shrouds. "Okay, one more, then we pick whatever from the pile," Julia said, her palm striking out at the material like it was alive. "Okay, but if you're only going to try on one more dress, it's got to be green." Julia groaned. She hated green. Sin brought out her hands in supplication. I know you hate green. Just trust me, okay? Sin. Cynthia insisted on she and Jules going together to prom so they could make their grand entrance and blow the dudes away. She'd also taken the initiative and ragged Julia's ass until she caved and let her do the makeup and hair for both of them. She wasn't letting her bestie into prom with anything resembling hippie chic. Julia was going to look put together and polished if it was the last thing Cynthia did. Cynthia dug around in her huge purse until she found her makeup bag and dragged it out, throwing it on Julia's vanity with a resounding smack. Julia eyed it warily. Pointing to it, she asked, "What's all this crap in there?" "Make you beautiful stuff," Sin said. The corners of Julia's mouth turned up. "That's a technical term, right?" "Hell yeah," Cynthia enthused with a wink. Julia sighed. She knew she'd look like a French whore by the time Sin was done with her, but she'd released the reins and Sin was firmly in charge of prom fashion. She had an errant thought, wondering about what Jason was up to. Definitely not this. "Woman up, Jules. I'm not taking a skin graft or something. Seriously, you act like you've never worn makeup before." There was a significant silence. "Okay, that was sort of lame. You the makeup queen." Julia slouched and Sin poked her in the back. "Posture, princess." Then she set to work. Foundation, powder, eyeliner, false eyelashes. False eyelashes? "No way. I'm not putting that crap on my own eyelashes." Julia stared at Cynthia. "How about just a few on the outer edge? They'll make your eyes look bigger." "They're big enough," Julia thought. If they were any bigger, she'd get towed. "They're ginger colored. You can hardly see your eyelashes," she wheedled. Julia shook her head. "No, just put the brown mascara on and be done with it." Cynthia sighed, defeated. She made it a point to spend a ton of time on each eye, finally swiveling Julia around in her chair to look at her reflection. Julia stared, and stared some more. A slow smile spread on Cynthia's face. "See, Jules? You're a goddess. Who was to know?" Julia couldn't believe the transformation. The mossy green of her dress set off her hair, making the red in it look like molten champagne. Her eyes sparkled like gold topaz, gems in a pale face with shimmering lips and a pouty apricot. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You can tell me now," Sin said, smug. Julia turned from her reflection and scowled at Sin. Cynthia waited. "Well, hell, you're the greatest." Cynthia grinned. "I know, dollface." Julia rolled her eyes. What was Jason going to think of her in this getup, with the makeup and everything? Julia rolled her gloss lip into her teeth and nibbled anxiously. Jason waited impatiently for Julia to arrive. He knew he should have nixed the lame plan of the girls. Them going together, retarded. He'd let Kevin convince him it was easier not to fight Cynthia. "Listen, man, just let him. I don't want to deal with Sin when she gets a head of steam about girl shit, you feel me?" Kevin had said. "What's so flaming ass important that I can't pick Jules up?" "I told ya, they're putting the mask and garb on." "What?" Jason asked, confused. He was already feeling gay in a tux. The bow around his neck was a slowly encroaching noose. He tugged at it again. "Hey, don't dick with that. It screws up the gig." "What's a gig?" Jason asked, messing around with the stupid noose. "It's... Damn, man, leave it alone," Kevin said, slapping his hand away impatiently. He took on either side of the corners of the bow tie and aligned them with Jason's Adam's apple. There, Kevin thought. He wondered if his ass-hat friend could leave it alone for the next 2 hours. 2 minutes. Probably not. It's a military term. It means to keep all your accessories in line with the middle of your body, Kevin said in a matter-of-fact way. "That's great, Kev. I'll sleep better knowing your ramrod dad gave you a few pointers." "Hey, Jacob, Dad served our country and has a few pearls of wisdom once in a while, along with some colorful vocabulary." "Oh shit, right?" Kevin said, totally missing the irony. Jason smiled and shook his head as they hopped into Kev's car. They made their way to the last dance they'd ever attend. "Jason." Kevin caught sight of Julia and elbowed Jason. They looked at the girls as they entered the gymnasium, where fake acrylic stars danced above their heads like wayward diamonds. Jason couldn't take his eyes off her. The breath left his body in one exhaustive rush. Jules was drop-dead gorgeous. Jason knew that people said that all the time about chicks, sometimes dudes even. But Julia floated inside the auditorium on a cloud of emerald vapor, a dress the color of green kissed by autumn, and stunned him into silence. Her hair looked almost red, its normal gold color boosted by the pine of her dress. Her eyes a sparkling gold. They took up half her face. Jason still couldn't look away. Julia walked toward him slowly. He noticed the dress showcased how curvy she was. She wasn't a twig, and she wasn't heavy. Jason took a shaky breath, his eyes on her hourglass figure as she moved toward him. He noticed all the other guys were staring at her too, and frowned. Julia reached him as he put his hands out for her, and his face smoothed. Jason pulled her closer and leaned down until his jaw brushed her temple. "You're beautiful," he whispered against her fragrant skin. Julia knew she looked beautiful. She didn't need a mirror to tell her. Jason's eyes told her. They moved out to the dance floor, hands knotted together, gazes locked. Julia waited in the bed with bated breath. Jason had dropped her off from prom and promised to sneak her in the bedroom window later, much later. Aunt Lily had the irritating habit of checking in on Julia. Julia clutched her cell in one hand so she could text Jason the instant she did. She laid on her side for, she swore, 10 hours. Finally, Lily opened the door a crack and, seeing that Julia appeared asleep, closed it softly behind her. Julia let a long breath out, texting Jason. He must have been waiting outside her house like a good stalker boyfriend. She let him in as he stumbled from outside the window. Damn, I won't miss this anymore. No more nut crunch or windowsills for me. Julia cocked an eyebrow. We wouldn't want your, nuts crunched. No, that wouldn't do, Julia said in a low, teasing voice. Come here, Jason said, thinking about how he'd kissed that smirk off her face. She was killing him. Standing there in her pajama bottoms and a cami, her hair was still loose and curled from the prom, the makeup still on. Aren't you supposed to take all that crap off your face? She scrunched her nose in the way he loved and said, Pillowcase will get rid of it. Really? Jason asked, grinning. He walked over to her, admiring her in her post-prom glory. The dance turned out okay, Jules, he said softly, bending to kiss the hollow between those sexy bones that intersected her neck. She nodded, a little breathless as his breath moved over her pulse. She wound her arms around his neck, and Jason's lips traveled up to her jaw and made its way to her forehead. He began peppering her face with butterfly kisses, his lashes grazing her skin above his lips. Her breathing became shallower, and Jason picked her up and carried her to the bed. They lay together, head to hip, the heat of their bodies one hot line. He moved against her, his hands on her ribs, kneading her flesh as she wound a leg around his hip, their mouths moving against each other. His hands traveled, and Julia pulled away. Jason, she whispered. What? He said, never breaking from his sensual assault. She could hardly breathe. Julia just wanted to finish what they had started, but she wanted forevermore. She thought of her parents, long gone, the thread that tied the fabric of her being together. Jason paused and pulled back to look at her face, a sliver of moonlight, a pale slash across her eyes. He saw the expression there and pressed his forehead against hers. I know, he moaned. I'm sorry, Julia whispered. It's not that I don't trust you. I know, he repeated against the skin of her forehead. A lone tear escaped her eye, and Jason caught it, staring into those eyes that he'd looked into for a decade. I want to be married. It's what my parents would have wanted, she said, and Jason felt her tremble against him. He silently promised to make her first time extra special. It'd be perfect if it killed him. You still miss them? He asked as a statement, tightening his hold on her. Every day, Julia replied, through eyes that had glossed with a sheen of tears. He smiled. Jason wanted her so damn bad. It wasn't just sex. He could have tapped any mindless alley cat in the school. Julia's different. She was his, and he was hers. Jason knew Jules was the one he wanted the moment he saw her. Leaning down, he kissed the crescent-shaped scar on her forehead, the only thing that marred her perfect skin. He could wait. Jason could wait forever if it meant being with Julia. They lay together in each other's arms until dawn shattered the darkness into a million pieces of golden orange, rose, and scarlet, flinging the colors about the room like so much broken